Hey everybody, welcome to Teal Tinted Glasses, episode 56. Today on the show we have good friend of the show, longtime friend of the show actually, Paul Gackle's on the show tonight. We also have Kevin Lacy. I know, Paul, you're a little pressed for time tonight, so we're just going to get right into everything here. And first, thanks for coming on the show, though.
Hey, thanks for having me on, guys. We don't do it enough, I guess.
You know what, we don't. We should do it more this season, for sure.
Yeah, I'll try to we'll figure it out. We'll find a way to work it into being on the road and all that crazy stuff that goes on, and we'll figure out a way to make it happen.
Yeah, absolutely. All right.
A regular Gackle Report podcast. I gotta, find a way to steal my time, my mic time somewhere else.
Well, we always got a seat here for you. Absolutely. I'm gonna get right into it, Paul. Got a few questions for you here. A little bit of concern at the end of the preseason with how some of those preseason games ended. Sharks obviously seemed like more regular players they put in, the worse they seemed to do. I'm not too concerned, but are you concerned at all about the team?
No, I wouldn't be too concerned about that. I mean, I think you got to remember that you're adding Jumbo back into the mix, so he hasn't played regular hockey since mid-January of last year. You're throwing Erik Carlsson onto a new team for the first time. You have some new depth players in terms of Suomela and Rourke Chartier, so there is a gel factor that's going to need to take place with this team. And then on top of that, you have just the fact that the preseason is sort of becoming, I'm going to play hockey and try to not get hurt. And
right.
You can't really play hockey that way, just like you can't really play, NFL football that way. And I think with, the NFL, you're seeing more and more teams just go, screw it all together. There's no point in even sending our starters out there for, more than a series or two a game. And you wonder if that's sort of what the NHL is sort of going to, because did the Sharks look awful, or did they just look like a team that, was trying to kind of work their way through the game without having to expend too much energy and get hurt? That's sort of what it seemed like to me. So I wouldn't read too much into it. That said, I did bring this up with Pete DeBoer today and a couple of the guys at practice, because, the thought was, how long does it take? Is it going to take to gel? We look at Erik Carlsson, we look at this team, but I don't think that you can expect them to be, the 1984 or 85, 86 or 84, 85 Oilers just overnight, right?
Right.
There probably is going to be a gel factor, and you have a tough road trip right off the bat. And the way the NHL is going nowadays, I sort of feel like the first 20 are almost like your last 20 in a way. Elliot Friedman likes to point out that stat that, I think it was 3 or 4 teams since the missed season in 04-05. There's only been 3 or 4 teams that have made the playoffs trailing, a playoff spot by 4 points or more on November 1st. So you really can't fall that far behind out of the gate. So that's kind of the dance I think the Sharks will be walking, is, there's a little bit of a gel factor, but, you can't wait too long to get into it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm with you, Paul, on that, because, and by the way, I'm Kevin Lacy, guys. Thanks for having me. No, but I'm with you on that, because the saying that I really like that seems to be more profound these days is, you can't make the playoffs in the first 20 games. You can't make the playoffs in the preseason, guys. So let's slow it down on the preseason losses. But you can't make the playoffs in the first 20 games, but you sure can miss the playoffs in the first 20 games. And not that, like, a good case. What's up?
Edmonton Oilers last year. I mean, that thing is fast.
Yeah, even the Coyotes. The Coyotes probably weren't going to the playoffs anyway, but I mean, they had the 3rd best record, I think, in the league after the All-Star break, and they still missed the playoffs by a mile, because that's how bad they were at the start.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the one thing that concerned me was just, it seemed like the top line with Joe Thornton, Joe Pavelski, and Evander Kane, like, it just seemed like nothing was going there. Is that a concern for you at all, Paul?
Well, it looks like they've already broken that line up. So I guess Pete DeBoer is seeing a lot of what you're seeing. And he's going to slot Evander Kane down on the 3rd line now with Suomela and Donskoy. So that looks like that's the way it's going to go tomorrow night. So maybe you spread your I hate to use the word weapons, but your weapons out a little bit. That's we got to find a better term in sports than that. But
yeah, balance.
Yeah, a little bit more of a balanced attack. You know, I don't really love that top line, to tell you the truth, right now with Joe Thornton and Joe Pavelski back together. You know, I've been sort of a proponent of, you know, let's spread our slow components out over a couple lines too, just the way the NHL's going. There is no, you know, slower top line tandem in the league than Joe Pavelski and Joe Thornton. And you know, when it looked like the Sharks might have a chance at getting John Tavares in the summer, you look at that and you go, okay, well, everything can slot in if that were the case, because you wonder, is Jumbo really a 19-minute a night top line center at this stage of his career? Maybe he is, maybe he's not, but you know, I'd feel more comfortable having him down in more of like a third line role. And I've always said that I thought that the best thing for the Sharks this year would be to split up Thornton and Pavelski, and then you could have, like, you know, you look at the way Pavelski, Kane, and Donskoy played down the stretch last year, and you go, if you have that as one line, you have Couture as another line, and then maybe some sort of Thornton-Meyer combo or something like that, then you could really, you know, have three pretty dynamic lines. But, you know, you have to if you're Pete DeBoer, I also get it. Like, this is day one. You kind of have to show Joe Thornton and Joe Pavelski some respect. And that's probably a trump card that you save in your back pocket until you look at it and you go, it's not really working. So we might come back on in 10 games and have the same conversation and say, you know what, this top line isn't clicking. Is it time to break those two up? Do we move Pavelski down to third line center, and is that the way to do it, or Thornton, or however you want to do it? But I think that, you know, just the history of those guys, the respect that you have to have for them, I guess you have to kind of go in the year and keep them together and have them sort of work themselves out of that duo that they have there.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And I'm with you. One of the things I really took from going to training camp this year and seeing the practices and whatnot is that the coaching staff really did try to mix things up, particularly on defense, but a little bit with the forwards too, where they were trying to get everyone acclimated with everyone. I mean, when you look at Vegas, you'd say, oh, Vegas had the James Neal line and Perron was with Smith and blah, blah, but they had a lot of injuries too. And no matter what move Gerard Gallant made, it was always the right one, because everybody had chemistry with everyone. And I think that's really just a key in general if you want to win a championship, whether you're Vegas, whether you're Washington, whether you're the Sharks. You know, I just think you need to have that kind of unity if you want to go all the way. And so if Peter DeBoer is going to test anything out, it does need to be in the preseason, does need to be these first month of the season or so. I'd like to see him continue to kind of play around. I love your ideas, Paul. I have been saying for 2-3 years that Thornton and Pavelski need to get split up and just have a different kind of you know, I feel like they get comfortable with each other, and not the good kind of comfortable.
Well, it ends up being so much of this possession forecheck game where they grind it down low, send it back to the point for Brett Burns, kind of get in front for a deflection. And it really seemed at points last year, it seemed to really get stale and not really kind of where the game's going these days. And, you know, we all know that Pavelski isn't the fleetest of foot, obviously. But to me, his lack of wheels really no longer became an issue all of a sudden when he was skating with Evander Kane and Donskoy down the stretch there. You know, Kane, you know, skates like the wind. And I thought the minute he joined the team and was partnered up with Pavelski, then Pavelski's that speed thing doesn't really become that big of a deal, you know, when it's just him on the line that's a little bit slower. But I feel like when you throw Thornton and him together, you know, that sort of compounds the issue. When do you ever see that line getting out on the rush and creating something dangerous that way? And if you look around the NHL, top line, like, that's how top lines produce so much offense. And, you know, I kind of went back and forth with Peter DeBoer on this a few times last year, because he always says that those rush opportunities, you know, they dry up in the playoffs. But I think over the last couple seasons, you're still finding that the teams like Vegas that can get out and score an easy goal, I say that in quotation marks, that way, are tending to find success. The Penguins, you know, did that during their runs. The Oilers were doing that when they were finding success. The Predators. I think that rush game has to be part of your offensive attack, and you're just not going to really see that with a Thornton Pavelski. They're not going to get it behind anybody's defense.
Just in the chat there, Paul, there's been brought up that Joe Thornton, now beardless, might gain at least, a little more speed from
right,
that.
There you go. There you go. He looked like a different guy today.
Oh, I believe it. I couldn't believe when that happened. Although I guess maybe it's time to change it up, right?
He always calls it a lifestyle, and you got to think, it's a new lifestyle here with Erik Carlsson in town.
That's true.
Why not start all over from scratch? But I think he's looking at it as a bit of a new beginning.
It's nice. I like that. What did you think of the final roster for the Sharks? With obviously Chartier makes the roster. How much do you think Chartier is gonna get into the lineup? Because I think there's gonna be like a rotation on that bottom line.
Yeah. Well, if you saw my column last week, I think I hit that roster right down on everybody. So I guess my answer to that is very predictable.
Yeah.
Was this final roster? You kind of had to keep 8 defensemen. I think there's no way you're letting Tim Heed just leave your team off of waivers, and probably the same there with Shimmick. So that seemed to make sense. And Chartier, to me, he was the guy. I mean, he proved himself, and kind of fell under the radar. He's been under the radar a lot since he's been in this organization, because that team, that Barracuda team in 2016-17, with guys like Meyer and LeBanc and Danny O'Regan, the way he was going, Chartier was always a guy that fell below the radar on that team. But he's taking all the defensive zone face-offs. He's so smart and defensive minded, and really was sort of the glue that kept that team together in a lot of ways, because he played so many unsung roles. If you think back to early in the year, there was that line that really took off that Sommer called the kid line. That was Chartier, LeBanc, and Goldobin, and he again was kind of really doing a lot. Those guys were kind of getting the rewards for that line, but he's the one who's getting the puck going out of the defensive zone, and just making a lot of small subtle plays that wind up producing the goal at the end, even if you don't get on the score sheet. So Chartier, to me, that's a move that that's one that really makes sense, considering how good he looked. I don't think you really knew what to expect coming into camp, and you've kind of forgot because you'd had those concussion issues.
Right.
But he has a lot of the things that I think DeBoer looks for in like a fourth line center. I love a guy like Danny O'Regan. I still think he's going to have a pretty decent NHL career, and I wonder if the move to Buffalo is a good thing for him. I don't know if the way DeBoer was using him would necessarily accentuated his skill set, but Chartier is a guy. He has a lot of those Eric Fair type attributes in terms of the high IQ, the details in his game, defensive minded. So I think that he could see some success.
I hope so. I want to, since you brought up Danny O'Regan, Danny O'Regan really didn't get much of opportunities when he was on the Sharks. He was getting maybe 4 to 5 minutes of ice time, which seemed kind of pointless.
Well, and he was playing with Joel Ward and Yannick Hansen or Barkley. Right. To me, Danny O'Regan needs other skill.
Yeah. Do you think that Chartier will get a better opportunity, a better look from DeBoer this year?
Well, not necessarily, but I think he's more – his game sort of maybe fits that role a little better, at least at this stage in his career. I'm not saying he doesn't have the potential to be a second or third liner, but I think that he can slide into that fourth line center role and find success. Whereas O'Regan, not really the player to be possession, and that wasn't really working for his skill set. So I think Chartier could find success in that. But I would agree with Ian that I think that you're going to see just combinations on that fourth line based on what the matchup is, based on who's going hot, based on that internal competition. That's a good spot to be in if you're the Sharks, where you have options like that. And you know what? If we get to January and it's still a rotating door like it was last year, I wouldn't at all be surprised if they go out and get another, Nick Spalling, Eric Fair type to lock that down. So we'll just have to see how that goes. Yeah,
I mean, like for Chartier, I mean, he's got a benefit because, like you said, he's not playing with, Yannick Hansen or Joel Ward. He's going to have, Sorensen or Carlson or Melker Carlson, obviously, or, Barclay Goodrow. So
all fast players.
Yeah, all fast players. So, I mean, he's definitely in a position to succeed. It's just going to be interesting to see, who, like, how that kind of rotates around and who ends up being the odd man out on that fourth line when it's all said and done.
Yeah, it will be a sort of, I mean, conventional wisdom, you have to think Marcus Sorensen's got it. This is his year to get in there and sort of lock down, more of a permanent role on this team. And, Barclay Goodrow is a really popular guy with Pete DeBoer. And, he's kind of your modern fourth liner in a way. He's not a slow guy, but, he still brings some of those physical elements. And then, Melker Carlson's always sort of, the monkey wrench on the team where he can go all the way up to the top line or the fourth line. And
he'll miss some games. He'll
miss some games due to injury. And, and somebody will always be hurt. So I see all those guys getting pretty substantial amount of playing time.
So with the roster moves today, with Dylan Gambrell and Lukas Radil being sent down, do you think either of them will see? Do you think they'll see cups of coffee in the NHL this year, or do you think one of them could make a push and get a good long look with the Sharks?
I'm thinking cups of coffee. Just because,
we hope so. We hope everything else
right.
Now.
Just right. To me, if it's not a cup of coffee, that means something's going pretty wrong with the bottom six.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, that could be possible too, because you think of the San Jose Sharks. Typically, one of their strong points has been always their center alignment. That 1-2 punch up top with Thornton and Couture. You got the super offensive centerman, and then Couture plays that defensive-minded role. And the year they went to the Cup, Patrick Marleau really slid into the third-line center role and played a huge role. And then Chris Tierney sort of upped his game and played that role last year. So that's always been such a big ingredient for the Sharks, is the depth down the middle, and Tomas Hertl had the potential to go there. This year, you look going into this, that might be the team's Achilles heel. You have a top-line center who's 39 years old, coming off of 2 major knee surgeries, and then a couple of unknown commodities, down at the bottom of the lineup in terms of Suomelo and Rourke Chartier. When I asked Pete about this in Calgary last week, he said he agrees that that's sort of the red flag for this team. But he also said, I think he's not really worried about it because he thinks the answer is in the room in terms of Pavelski's ability to play center, Hertl's ability to play center, and he thinks he can just work the chess pieces around until he finds the right mix. So he's not sweating that right now. But I think that's a bit of an interesting storyline for the Sharks, because ultimately they did want to get John Tavares. That was like kind of mission number one. You get Tavares and everything really slots in. Hey, it's really nice to get Erik Carlsson too, no doubt about it. I think as good a defenseman as I've seen, in my lifetime. My column that's coming out tomorrow, I say basically in my 30 years of watching hockey, I think the 3 most dynamic defensemen I've seen are Lidstrom, Scott Niedermayer, and Erik Carlsson. So I think that's amazing to have him on that back line there with Vlasic and Burns. But you still do have a question about the center alignment that's kind of dangling out there.
On Erik Carlsson, like obviously the Sharks obviously want to get him signed long term. What does that do to the salary structure going forward when you consider like Joe Pavelski? There's been, reports that there's been no talks on an extension. Obviously Justin Braun and Brendan Dillon are going to be coming up on new contracts. Not this year, but the following year's last year of their deals. There's obviously someone has to go, right? Like there's got to be an odd man out at this point.
Well, here's the way I look at it.
Okay.
And I've thought this all along. This is our farewell to Captain America this year. And I look, he's a player where, man, for a 7th round draft pick and what he's done, this is a guy that squeezed every drop out of his lemon that he possibly can. And hats off to that guy, his work ethic and what the career he's been able to build for himself and turn himself into. But he's not a guy, he's a guy that you look at and you go, how effective is he really going to be into his late 30s?
Right.
Like, again, he doesn't have the wheels. He's not a big guy. You know, everything's grit, determination. Hey, maybe that works in his favor. Maybe those things just never change. But the way the league's going, it's getting younger, quicker every single year. And, you know, you've got Burns for 7 more years at $8 million. You got Vlasic for 7 years at $8 million. Couture signs the big contract. Kane for 7 years. Like, something's got to give.
Right.
And to me, it's probably, you know, not re-signing a 35-year-old Joe Pavelski. So if you take Joe Pavelski off the books and you take Joe Thornton off the books this year at $5 million, that's $11 million right there. That's probably your money to re-sign Erik Carlsson. And I'm guessing because Joe loves San Jose and he loves the Sharks organization, and if he still wants to be part of this group to chase maybe a second Stanley Cup or his first Stanley Cup, you know, I could see him coming back at just $1 million. They can always make it work with Jumbo. Yeah. But I think that, yes, Pavelski is probably the one that you're going to have to kick out if you're going to keep this train moving. And you want to be competitive. You know, you have to turn those older pieces around. And they've kind of done that in acquiring, you know, cutting ties with Marleau. And, you know, if you cut ties with Pavelski and then turning that sort of into Evander Kane and Erik Carlsson.
Paul, you mentioned the question marks about the center position. If the team's, I won't say struggles, but maybe struggles offensively from the forward side this season to where the Sharks don't end up winning a Stanley Cup this year, is there going to be a sacrifice on the D next year? Like, if the Sharks can re-sign Erik Carlsson, where does that leave Brent Burns if the Sharks, for say, don't score enough goals and offense is problem up front?
I've wondered this myself. And, you know, you look at Erik Carlsson on the right side, and he's going to be 27, 28 minutes, and that's kind of what Brent Burns has gone at. I've always wondered, and there's no inside sources here.
Right.
That I have. But I think a lot of us kind of look at that Burns contract and be a little nervous maybe because he's so, what's the right word? Just, he's up and down. He's an up and down kind of guy.
Yeah.
And you wonder if
erratic.
Right. He's erratic. That's the word. So, you know, I look at you know, he has no move clause, obviously, but I also think that he's the guy that you can make want to move if you made him uncomfortable. You know, could he? I don't think this is anything imminent in this year, and this is just me riffing. But you kind of wonder, could he be that piece that you dangle out there to get the John Tavares you didn't get maybe via a trade at some point?
Right.
Because I still think this team at some point is going to have to address that it doesn't really have, you know, a second elite center like to go with Logan Couture post Joe Thornton, right?
Yeah. Well, the Sharks are certainly all in this year, and as I always say, only one team can win the Stanley Cup, because if it was all done on paper, there'd be 9 winners each year.
And I want to hear what you guys think about this, because I wrote about this. It's going to be in my tomorrow column, so I'll give you a little.
Is that on the Mercury News?
That's going to be on the Mercury News. So I'll give you a little preview, but there's this topic of that it's Stanley Cup or bust for the Sharks. And to me, I just don't know about that concept in hockey, like really to begin with, because, and, you know, I look at the Sharks and obviously I think they have a great chance of winning the Cup, but I don't think by any means they're a slam dunk. I don't think they're the equivalent of what the Warriors are in basketball. You know, I think the Jets, you look at that forward group, is pretty nasty. And, you know, they still have a pretty good defense with Bufflin and Trouba and Myers. You can spread that out over 3 pairings. I still love the Nashville Predators blue line. You know, you can't take them for granted. You know, you can't take the Knights for granted. It's going to be interesting to see what they look like, you know, with Pacioretty and Paul Stastny and some of the moves. They've sort of acquired themselves a shutdown line now. And obviously there's good teams in the Eastern Conference. Tampa is still really stacked, and Washington's coming off a cup. Pittsburgh, you know, got a short summer for once. Shorter summer, I guess. So, I mean, the Sharks to me are one of 6 teams that has a really good chance. What's the fan base's reaction if they get to the Western Conference final but don't win the Stanley, or get to the cup and don't win it? Is it these guys choked and they're losers, or like what do you think are fair expectations for this team?
I mean, I agree with what you're saying. I mean, you don't really. There's no team that you can't guarantee a cup. Like, you just can't. Yeah. Right. But I feel like
first round and you're screwed.
Right. But I feel like the Sharks. I mean, they've definitely put themselves in a position where if they're gonna win, man, this might. I mean, this
is the most talented team they've had, right?
Exactly. So I mean, this is their best chance. I mean, I would definitely be disappointed. I think if they couldn't go all the way. I mean. I don't know if I'd say choke. I mean, we'd have to watch the series, but I don't like the word choke anyway.
Depends what happens. But if they play a 6 or 7 game series against Winnipeg and lose, I mean, to me, those are two.
Right.
Those are two amazing teams, but that's the word that will come out because it'll be, well, you guys got Erik Carlsson, so what happened?
Right. Yeah.
That drives me insane. But.
Well, yeah, because I mean, look at because they've already drawn comparisons to the Ducks with Niedermayer and Pronger, and
so, and they got the job done.
That's already out there in the ether. I mean, the Sharks are gonna win. I mean, if you look at the way I see it, if you look at the way this team is set up, like contract wise, I mean, they have to, because otherwise, the thing that scares me about the San Jose Sharks with their current contract setup is becoming the Chicago Blackhawks without the Cups.
Yes,
where you're starting to shed good players and just fill in from the bottom until you just can't, until you've basically gone to the end of the barrel. Like, I mean, Chicago's been lucky, they found an Alex DeBrincat, but when Alex DeBrincat needs money, are they going to have the money there for him?
Right.
And I think that's the part that concerns me with the Sharks is that, do they become Chicago without the Cups?
But is that, and the Kings to an extent too, because the Kings are kind of getting into that territory.
I think so. I think you're right on that.
But is that the modern NHL where, to me, the modern NHL, what you kind of have to do is you have your 4 or 5 guys that make money, and you kind of have to find creative ways to keep churning through those depth supporting cast. And that's one area where the Sharks have done a good job is with their recruitment of European free agents, is that they've been able to bring in, Donskoys and Suomelas and Carlsson. So you hope that pipeline stays open, and they're kind of unique in their ability to snag, these Joachim Ryan, Kevin LeBanc types in the 6th, 7th round. So to me, the success going forward is going to depend on, guys like Doug Wilson Jr. in that scouting, and whether they can continue to keep funneling these players in and out on the 3rd and 4th lines, and they're cheap, but that they can find, whether it's in Europe or college free agents or in the later rounds of the draft.
Definitely, and that's the thing. I mean, I'm confident because I feel like with Doug Wilson Jr. taking over teams on the scoreboard, I feel like Tim Burke would never have picked a Ryan Merkley. Right. And so I kind of like that. That's if that's the change in philosophy going forward. I feel a little better about the Sharks' ability to backfill through the draft. I just, with the way things were, where you're kind of picking, I don't think Josh Norris is a terrible guy, but I don't think he ends up being a top 6 guy. He's probably a middle 6 guy.
But you don't mind giving him up in a package to get Erik Carlsson?
I was about
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. But
Ottawa seems to think so.
But I think that, you know what I mean? With the change in drafting, as long as that becomes the consistent way forward, I'm not as worried as I would have been if, we just had another, Ryan McLeod, for example, getting picked.
It seemed like a difference in philosophy.
Yeah,
Merkley this year.
Oh yeah, that's a swing for the fences. That's
go with the high risk, high reward.
Right. Never.
You haven't really seen that out here. So
no,
now,
so that's good.
Impressed with the amount of teal that you have in the background there as a guy that lives in Canada.
Well,
how the heck do you get all that stuff?
I have wonderful people that follow the show.
And you're supposed to say, "I have my way."
No, I have amazing people that follow the show, and they are generous with me, and they send me all kinds of cool stuff, and I am forever grateful, and they all know who they are.
Yes, and those are the people who need to encourage more people to subscribe, because we like having guests like Paul Gackle on the show. it's awesome. So thank you.
Subscribe, guys. Subscribe.
Yeah,
absolutely. Paul, are you covering the Barracuda this year?
I hope to.
Awesome.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little trickier, you know, in my new Mercury News position because of the travel. So that kind of takes me out, and then, you know, that's half your season right there. So that's a little bit more challenging, but you know, I like to be in the barn as much as possible.
And at least it's easier than tracking Worcester, right?
No doubt about that. No doubt about that. And you know, just the way last year ended, and some of the talent that's coming in with Gambrell, and I'm looking forward to this Barracuda season.
Yeah, I'm really excited. I mean, I think the same thing. It seems like I say this every year with Barracuda. I'm a little concerned about the defense, but I like the goaltending. I like the forward group. It's just the defense is the question mark, and it seems like that's the thing every year, except for last year where we kind of knew it was going to be just strip mined.
Right, and then that's where it's kind of a bummer that you can't send, you know, Heat and Shimmick back through because, you know,
conditioning.
You have a couple of guys who would be, you know, top notch pairing in the AHL. That's going to probably, you know, just be practice players at the NHL level this year, barring injury.
Yeah.
All right, I got a couple more questions for you, Paul, and then I'll let you get out of here because I know we've held you here a little longer than
that's
we
all
expected
good,
to have you. Who's your dark horse team for the Pacific Division this year?
I shouldn't go with this team because I go with them every year and I fail, but it's always the Calgary Flames for some reason. They never come through and do anything for me. But I like some of the things that they did with Carolina, and you know, I've looked at that back end. It's going to be interesting to see how Noah Hannafin fits in. You know, I'd say the Coyotes, but I don't see the Coyotes as being a playoff team yet. But but they're dangerous. And whereas Calgary could, you know, they could do anything from win the division to being, you know, like in sixth place or something. You know,
they might end up being Edmonton this year.
Yeah, I can't figure out why they always let me down and why I keep going back to them, but I do.
In the Coyotes, I keep the Coyotes are going to do something this year, and I'm off this. I can't do it again. I can't do it again this year. I can't do it. Who in the Pacific?
Who do you have? Who's
my dark horse?
Yeah.
I think, and maybe they're not so much a dark horse, but I feel like LA might be better than they're being built, despite their slowness. Like, despite the fact they're slowing down, I still think they might surprise people.
Okay.
You know what? A big thing with LA, Ian and Paul, is the fact that they'll have Jeff Carter this year, which they did not have him.
Carter. They will have Kovalchuk. But my issue with them is always I just don't really like their depth.
Right. No, and I agree.
It's like the top six is awesome and Doughty and Quick, you know, but then you get below that and there's, you know, not much there usually.
Yeah.
Who's the team?
Go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say, who's the team in the Pacific you think that might not be as good as they're being billed right now? Who's overrated in the Pacific?
Probably Calgary.
I think that's super fair to put them in both ends of that.
It's funny because I can't argue with it because Calgary, like, I don't know, like Calgary, you think that they're gonna, you think like every year, you know, like we've, you know,
a couple years ago when they made that late push,
right?
They had like a 10 game point streak or 12 game point streak or something. And I thought, okay, here it is. Like now they're here. And then they kind of dissipated and then got bounced in the first round. So
and on paper, like they always have like they've always seemed to have like one of the top blue lines in the league on paper.
On paper, you think
on paper
they're gonna go, and with Mike Smith, you know, in goal, I always go, how are you gonna get in on these guys? It's just gonna be in and out of the zone. And for some reason, what do you guys think of Edmonton?
It's hard to count out a team with Connor McDavid on it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I mean, you're missing Sekera to start. I mean, they're going to really have to do something. You know, they're going to have to come out of the gate just banging without Sekera and then weather the storm until Sekera gets back. I think that's their best shot. If they stumble out of the gate really hard, they're done.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to be a bloodbath in that front office.
Yeah, it'll be, We'll see if Todd's around in December, and Shirelli, I don't. My goodness.
Yeah, and with Edmonton too, like David Staples had a pretty good article, kind of candid article on the Edmonton Review or Journal Review the other day, where he basically said, I don't know about Jason Garrison, and I don't know about Jakub Jurabek, who has since been released / traded, very confusing, and other guys. Like the depth on defense, he kind of said, I don't think that's improved any from last year. And me personally, I don't think their forwards really are that deep on the third and
They're
fourth.
really not. No.
So yeah, I don't know. I think Edmonton misses the playoffs again.
The thing with Edmonton too is, can they get Draisaitl to play on his own line? That's going to be huge, because if they can't get Draisaitl off of McDavid's wing, they're done.
So are we saying basically Sharks, Golden Knights, and then is this a year where 3 go from the Pacific and 5 from the Central?
Could be.
I think so. I definitely still put stock in the Ducks. But again,
Andre Casson now is out
quickly.
The stock's dropping for sure, but I'm still a believer in Gibson, and I think they're better than the other teams. For me, the team that might push would be Arizona, but I don't know. That they're going to need some big steps for that to happen.
Well, I'll tell you, for the Ducks, with all the injuries they dealt with last year, to be opening the season without Perry
and Kessler.
And Andre Cash is out now too with the concussion.
And Kessler and somebody else. Oh, Nick Ritchie sells a contract thing.
Right. Yeah. And plus, I just mentioned Gibson. We all know Gibson gets hurt for 25 games of the year.
But when he's healthy, though, I think he's the best goalie in the Pacific when he's healthy.
Yeah.
It's going to be interesting to see what the Ducks do. I think they're another team that, they always seem to stick around. Like, they're always kind of there.
They do, but I'll tell you, in that series with the Sharks last year, they were playing like 1990s hockey, and the Sharks were in a different dimension.
Yep.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think you can really flip a coin for that third spot. Would it surprise me to see Calgary there? No. Would it surprise me to see Edmonton there? Maybe a little bit, but not really. Again, because if Talbot is good and McDavid's still McDavid, obviously, he's going to put up the points. It's just, can he do it by himself? That's obviously the big question. And then, obviously Vancouver, I think, is going to be awful.
You would think. Maybe they'll be the one that surprises us all.
Maybe. They I don't trust that goaltending. They have no goaltending.
Yeah, that's very true. But, hey, Paul, kind of a different tangent, since you were talking about the Barracuda real quick. It came up today. I know Kurs Pashelka was asking about it, and I don't really have an answer. What happened with the ECHL affiliate? Because Allen just suddenly became Minnesota's partner there in July, and the Barracuda, one of the topics that has repeatedly been brought up on our shows over the summer has been, what are they going to do with the 19 to 20 forwards that the Barracuda have on the roster? And you have no ECHL affiliate now?
They sent a bunch to Orlando.
I don't have an answer to.
You don't? Okay. All right. Well,
probably because it's juicy. Because it's pretty inexcusable to not have an ECHL affiliate at this point.
Yeah, Did they not just send a bunch of people to Orlando today?
Yeah, they sent some people to Orlando, but they literally have Orlando.
That's on loan, right?
Right. That's not their.
So that's what they're going to have to do. I don't know.
I don't
Bring
know.
back the San Francisco Bulls, baby. That's my answer.
Oh, geez.
Put them in the Chase Center or whatever it's going to be called.
Which other outside of the Pacific and with the Sharks, what team are you looking forward to watching? Just like, what team interests you the most this season in the NHL outside of the Pacific?
It's hard to not want to take a look at the Toronto Maple Leafs. As much that probably makes your stomach churn because all you get is Maple Leafs up there, but but definitely, I'm interested to see what that Tavares Matthews 1-2 punch down the middle looks like, and whether that's enough for them to overcome. I still think they have some blue line issues there.
Yeah, when I look at that division, and you figure the only way I can see the Leafs getting out of the first round, because if they have to play Tampa or Boston, I don't like Toronto in a 7-game series with either of those teams. So the only way I figure you got to finish first in that division and get a wild card team.
Yeah,
that's like their best out, and I think that's the thing for them. I mean, who knows? Maybe they do something to their blue line as the season goes on, but as of right now, I feel like, especially Boston. Boston just seems to have their number, and I don't know if Tavares is going to be enough to get them out of that, to get them past that first round.
And in that division, I always find, like I found toward the end of the year, that Florida was really fun to watch. So I'm kind of interested to see if they can carry that momentum and kind of be a bit of a force in the Eastern Conference this year. And obviously, as Winnipegger, I always keep an eye on the Jets.
Absolutely.
And they're, obviously also one of the young, exciting teams in this league, and see if this can be their year. And I'm really interested in Colorado, because they were dangerous in the times that I saw them play the Sharks live head-to-head out there in Colorado. And I wonder if they're one of those teams that can't potentially, come out of nowhere and take a bit of a leap forward. And I'm interested to see how Dallas is going to respond to Jim Montgomery, former Shark, who had a pretty good track record in the NCAA. If he can tighten the screws down there, I still think they have some pieces that they can work with.
Yeah, I like Dallas. I think Dallas is a team that I definitely want to keep an eye on, because I like what Jim Montgomery did in Denver.
Yeah.
And also, that team has a lot of pieces. I don't know if I love their goaltending. Like, I think Ben Bishop's past his best before date, but they've got some good young defensemen. They've obviously got, one of the most exciting 1-2 punches in the league with Ben and Sagan, and now you had Radulov to that last year. I mean, it's just there's a lot of fun on that team to be had. And I just, without Hitchcock there, I think they should be a more entertaining team to watch this year, at least, if nothing else, more entertaining.
Yeah, you just wonder how Hitchcock toward the end, is he really relating to 20-somethings in the modern NHL, and were they buying in? It sounds like they weren't really buying in St. Louis anymore, and they had to run them out of there. And
the way that Dallas has built their roster over the last 2 to 3 years, where it's very offensive heavy. So what do? You bring in an ultra conservative coach to coach them. I mean, that's just not a good mix.
No. Yeah, they're interesting.
Yeah. Only thing with Colorado, Paul, Colorado is so bipolar, I feel like, because the last time Colorado was this good, they finished in last place the next year.
That's true.
So
that's true. But man, I think Nathan McKinnon's as good as anyone in this game almost.
Oh, yeah.
Connor McDavid and that line has a lot of punch, and Mikko Rantanen.
Mikko Rantanen.
Some more from you guys on Timo Meier versus Mikko Rantanen?
Hey, Timo, I think, looked like one of the best Sharks in training camp and in the preseason games. So I'm hoping that this will die down. I was definitely a guy who wanted Rantanen over Meier, but I've always liked Meier. I really wanted.
I think Meier's going to be a 25 to 30 goal. In that 25 to 35 can be. He might be
a 23 goal scorer, but
then that might be a problem, because Rantanen is going to be. Pretty
35.
Close. Yeah. And a point per game, maybe.
Yeah. I mean, that draft made me unhappy. I like Timo Meier. Love Timo Meier. Don't get me wrong. But, I mean, obviously, I think a lot of teams are looking back and being like, oh, we let that Barzal guy go by. That was really dumb.
I was going to say Barzal, but everybody kind of dropped the ball on that one.
Right, yeah. And then Mikko Rantanen, I like Mikko Rantanen, but I do like, I do like I like Timo Meier's game a lot. Maybe he doesn't put up the points, but the Sharks have, more sandpaper now than they've had in a long time. And Timo Meier's a big part of that.
Yeah.
Timo Meier and Evander Kane, obviously, as well.
Right. Yeah, so I from that perspective, I think the Sharks got the guy they needed, really, because Mikko Rantanen, he's a great scorer, but he's not going to give you that sandpaper that the Sharks sorely lack sometimes.
It was interesting seeing Kane get run a little bit in that Calgary game last week, and just going right after it, because you get accustomed in Sharks territory to seeing guys get run, and
everyone just goes like, well, everybody's to be you
around, yeah.
Yeah, and you saw that, and you saw Timo Meier going after guys, but not like when we saw Timo Meier in the AHL. with the Barracuda. I mean, he had games where he was just a homicidal maniac.
Yeah.
and I'm glad he's kind of reined that in, and you know, he goes and he answers the bell, but he's not over the line like he was. You know, I called him, I think my nickname for him was Diet Lucic when he was on the Barracuda.
Yeah.
I remember a game, I think you got really a talking to last year in Vegas, that game on Black Friday. And he kind of cross-checked David Perron in the ozone, and
who wouldn't want to do that though?
And it just yeah, everybody does. It just kind of killed the momentum of an attack, and I remember Pete getting a little salt and vinegar over that one. But I think when you do that at the NHL level, and you have guys in the room like Joe Thornton and boys like Pete DeBoer, you figure it out pretty quickly.
Right, and I think that's why I think that was a big reason why they held Merkley up as long as they did, so that he could get that rubbing off from.
Yeah, exactly. Give him more time just to be around these men, and then he goes back. He remembers, you know, he has his eye on the ball a little bit more.
Yeah, I love it. How many games Tom Wilson gonna get? Last question for you.
10. I don't know.
10? I think he needs like the not the half season suspension that Torres got, but he's got to be getting into Raffi Torres territory somewhere here. Like
he's been suspended more times than Raffi Torres was. Now, granted, Raffi Torres had a few times where he should have been suspended and wasn't, and I think that's where it caught up.
I would be okay if it's more. I mean, I think the guy's a goof personally.
Yeah,
Tom Wilson. So.
Actually, Paul, I want to ask you real quick, since we have talked about the Pacific quite a bit.
Yeah.
What about Seattle? Like, because Seattle, the league is saying 2020. We hope it's not 2021, but it could be. You know where that's going.
Lockout.
Yeah. Why not get the CBA done now so that Seattle can join in 2020?
I would love that. I think everybody would love that. But as you know, these things, I don't know.
Overnight.
I don't know if we go to a CBA without seeing a work stoppage again. Because it's so ingrained in the DNA at this point. And even after they missed the season in 04-05, they still went to a work stoppage in 2012, 2013, and it didn't seem to hurt the league, you know? And so I just feel like both sides are going to be incentivized to push it there, and we'll probably get another shortened season.
And the thing that bugs me was, like, I feel like in the past two lockouts, you know, I kind of sided with the players, but this time I feel like it's going to be the players that are going to be the driving factor here, not the owners this time around.
Yeah, and then here's another thing. Now that you bring that up, because that's a great point, is that Olympic thing, that's going to be a big deal in this.
Well, escrow too.
Players did not like that at all.
No.
That the NHL tried to use that as leverage to extend the CBA. Like, they think that that's something that they're entitled to.
Right.
That got thrown into those negotiations, and that they actually didn't go. It's going to be harder to play nice guy.
Yeah, and then escrow, obviously, I think the players are sick of escrow.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Paul, I've kept you here much longer than I thought we were going to keep you here.
Well, it ended up we just ended up kind of rolling, so I guess
that's how we do it on Teal Tinted Glasses.
We just talk forever. It never ends.
Our Erik Carlsson show was 2 hours long.
That's true. No, Paul, definitely. I'll my people call your people. We'll get you back on.
Yeah. Let's do it again.
All right, sounds good.
Okay.
Thanks for coming on, Paul.
Guys, talk to you later.
All right, bye.
Paul. And folks, thanks for tuning in tonight. You know, we love having guests like Paul Gackle on the show. We are going to try and have a couple more. I have a couple lined up already for early part of this season. But among the questions we like getting from you as an audience and the feedback and whatnot, please do the survey if you haven't already. One of the things I'd like to hear from is, who do you want us to bring on the show as a panelist? If we can interview someone, we'd love to do that. But who do you want to have on the show? And I don't mean like, I want Joe Thornton, because we can only go so far with our connections. But as great as that'd be. But you know, something feasible that we can do. We'd love to make it happen, because it's a win-win for you as viewers, us just, you know, having a variety of guests on the show. So
apparently we need to bring on this hockey jerk guy. This hockey
jerk.
Guy
Well,
so
the thing is, you said Matt Barzal, and you like summoned the demon. That's So, where are we in our show? By the way,
we're all over the place. I mean, we had Paul a lot longer than I thought we were gonna have Paul, and I was obviously super gracious for his time because it's the night before the regular season starts. He's got stuff to put in, obviously, with the Merc, and so. Yeah,
definitely check out the Mercury News. Paul's part of the Bay Area News Group. Check that out tomorrow. He mentioned his article. I always feel like the opening day of NHL season is a must-buy for the Mercury News, just because there's usually a lot of different content, like a bunch of different articles and different takes and whatnot. So check it out tomorrow for sure.
Yeah, it was definitely good to have Paul on. Again, we'll have Paul on going forward too, so I'm looking forward to that. I don't know, where do you want to go from here?
Well, you mentioned Tom Wilson real quick.
Okay, yeah, let's get Tom Wilson.
Freaking guy. I mean, if you haven't seen the hit, just go online, search Tom Wilson, or hey, cheap plug, follow at Kevin Lacy 22, because I've tweeted a few things about it. But he just remember Raffi Torres hitting Nick Kurdilis in the preseason that got him 41 games, or not Nick Kurdilis, Jakob Silfverberg a couple years ago. Yeah. This hit's way worse. It's kind of the same plays on the ice, like where they were in relation to each other on the ice, but Wilson has no remorse and just hits Oscar Sundqvist right in the face. And Oscar Sundqvist was the guy that Pittsburgh traded with a first-round pick to get Ryan Reeves. So this is really all Ryan Reeves' fault going full circle.
This is full circle. Right? How do these guys still like? There's some players that are still in the league, and I just don't understand why. Ryan Reeves and Tom Wilson are two of them. Like how these guys.
I actually think both have skill, but Ryan Reeves is the only one who sometimes shows it, and Tom Wilson, if he's not parked in front of the net, he's getting suspended. Like,
right.
I don't. I just want them to have some repercussions, like legitimate repercussions.
Yeah.
Because you look at Matt Cook. Matt Cook got all those warnings and eventually found himself out of the league. Raffi Torres got all the warnings, found himself out of the league. Tom Wilson.
Well, would Raffi Torres be out of the league, though, if he didn't have zombie leg?
What?
If he didn't have zombie leg. Didn't they put like the cadaver into his leg to try and make it work again?
I have no idea.
All right.
You lost.
My understanding is he has zombie leg. They put like cadaver parts into his leg to try and make it work again properly.
Where they have the victims that he headshotted and couldn't use their limbs anymore.
Yes, Marco Sturm's thigh in his.
Anyway.
Wow, way up.
Way off. Hey, there was other news today. Toronto lost half the goaltending in their system.
Yeah, who's going to play net for the Marlies now?
Casimir Kaskisuo.
Oh, Kaskisuo, that's right. Okay. Yeah, so Kelvin Pickard and McElhinney went on waivers, and they were both claimed. One by Philly and one by Carolina?
Yeah, they both have goaltending issues, which I actually felt really bad for New Jersey, because I felt if anyone needed a fill-in while Corey Schneider's on the mend, it was them.
Yeah.
But and speaking of fill-ins, guess who's joining the show? Why do you get an intro and we didn't, Hockey Jerk?
Well, Barzal came up in conversation, so
I knew it.
Plus, Ian, you are correct. Raffi Torres does have a cadaver's leg.
Yes.
Apparently I need to look this up. So while y'all looking up Tom Wilson killing Oscar Sundqvist, I'll look up Raffi Torres and this cadaver.
It was a whole thing, he's got a cadaver leg, and they had him. Where was it? I think it was like the Fan Fest that year. He made this whole speech where he's like, "Yeah, I'm feeling good," and then he blasted Silfverberg in the head, and that was the end of it.
It's terrible.
Look, to me, the Toronto goaltending situation is, I mean, it stinks for them that they lost Pickard and McElhinney, But they'll be fine because Kaskisuo really should have been in the AHL the last couple of years instead of the E where he just, he couldn't move up. And if the Marlies really needed a goalie, I'm sure they could convince Steve Mason or Kari Lehtinen or someone like that who's just begging for a job to.
Yeah.
Well, and I like that you mentioned those guys, Kevin, because those guys are probably two AHL goalies who have a lot of NHL experience. So
didn't
see. This is what happens. This is what happens when I'm not feeling 100%. Is like my wit and my sassiness just oozes out at a.
I was going to say, we went from Paul Gackle, super informative, to hockey jerk making fun of cadaver legs and wow.
Yeah,
right along.
In the chat, Antoine Bibeau did go through. He did make it through waivers and was assigned to.
I thought he got claimed by Ontario.
If you believe the score, he played for Ontario last year, and he's
Yes.
Yeah.
We should fill people in who aren't aware real quick. Yeah. The score reported that Antoine Bibeau has been a goaltender of the Ontario Reign since the start of last year.
And was returning to Ontario from San Jose.
If they're paying him to play for us, then sure.
Internet, so helpful.
Yeah. Oh, actually, speaking of paying people to play for them, also Sam Gagner got moved to the Marlies for nothing.
For nothing, just loan. That's great. I can't believe Sam Gagner.
8 points in an NHL game, and he's now going to be the Marlies' probably second line center.
Well, and it's like, didn't we go through this like 4 years ago where, he was on the out in Edmonton after being, a good player for them. And then he, makes his way through, I think he was in Arizona and there was one other team, but, he ends up in Columbus and revitalizes his career. And then, off to Vancouver, and it's, more of the same as what we saw in Edmonton a few years ago. So I'm wondering if, is the rabbits that he's been pulling out of the hat, is he all tapped out on that, or does he got another one in him?
Yeah. Gagner actually had a decent year for Vancouver last year, so I was surprised that the fallout was that quick.
There's been this been a really strange year for guys getting kind of moved around and stuff, like just weird waiver wire moves, and I don't know. It's just, I feel like this year's been extra odd for just strange waiver wire stuff.
I saw somebody on Twitter say they would take Sam Gagner over Erik Carlsson, and I was like, I wouldn't.
Oh, God, I'd take it.
Yeah, have they gone to Cap Friendly lately and seen what Sam Gagner is making to play second line center for the Marlies?
We all kind of went on and on about Chris Tierney's potential contract, and then you look at Sam Gagner, who makes more and has done less.
Yeah.
So.
Yep. So since Kuda Phil is in the chat right now, and we did mention Antoine Bibeau, do we want to talk at all about the Barracuda at least a little bit?
Yeah, I'm excited about the Barracuda. I have my AHL package. I think I work really early, but I'm gonna watch what I can, and then I'm gonna watch it the next day probably. But I'm pretty excited for the Barracuda this year. I'm excited that the AHL package is affordable finally.
Yeah, $80 for the season, no longer $300, guys. Or
even if $80 is too rich for your blood, you can still get I think you can get the Sharks or the Barracuda alone for home and away for I think 60 or 50.
60, I think, yeah. So it's definitely I opted for the $80 package because I'd like to watch everyone else's depth. So. But yeah, and then Friday, of course, is the season opener. The Sharks open tomorrow at home. The Barracuda open Friday at home against Ontario, where they will be playing against Antoine Bibeau. Just kidding. Actually, one of the things I wish I'd asked Paul was Josef Koronash, who is kind of the de facto backup for Bibeau this season. He was injured on day 3 of training camp, and I don't know if he's ever come back. Right now, they have Austin Lotz, who is an ECHL goalie, on tryout. but I'm curious. It's a good thing we have Bebo on the team, because otherwise we'd be down to an ECHL goalie already.
Yeah, that'd be rough.
But what do you like? Where's your expectation for the Barracuda to finish in the division? Because I actually think that a team like Stockton has improved tremendously this year, and actually the Barracuda are fortunate that Dylan Dubé made the Flames roster, because I think he would have given them nightmares this year.
I'm gonna admit, like, I'm a little bit out of the loop as far as, like, I've been so focused on the Sharks that I'm really kind of out of the loop as far as what the depth looks like for some of the other teams in the division.
Yeah, that's fair. It's early. I mean,
it's early, right? Like, I mean, I think as the AHL season starts, I'm going to start getting a good feel for the rest of the teams. It's just that weird time at the start of the season where you're kind of just, you're focused on the Sharks, obviously, because that's what we're going to talk about the most. And then you try to keep up with all the other news, but there's so much, like, every day, especially like on a day like today where it was like, all these waiver claims and da-da-da-da-da. It's really hard to focus on one thing. But I think this Barracuda team should be a playoff team at least. Like, I don't know about where they fit in the division as far as, like, slotting, but I feel like this team should be a playoff team. I mean, the defense is a little bit sketchy, but it's got great goaltending. We've seen, in training camp, I think Dylan Gambrell's going to do fine in the AHL. I think it's going to be a great experience for him to get his game better. Obviously, I was a big Gambrell guy throughout the offseason, thinking that he was going to be on the Sharks. That didn't happen. But by no means is this guy a bust suddenly. Like, this is going to be a great opportunity for him to get quality minutes and really, adapt to the pro game. You got Reid, you've got Latunov. I mean, Latunov is one of the guys I'm most excited to watch. Yeah. I think he does just silly, crazy things with the puck. You got how big it walks, and just, I mean, there's so many guys.
Oh, by the way, if y'all missed my live from training camp videos, it's Jaden Halbgawaks, confirmed by his mother. Thank you for following me, Jimmy. So it's Halbgawaks, and it is Suomela, according to Dan Rusanowski, even though that still makes no sense to me. I'm going to try to teach myself to say Suomela.
All right.
You'll probably hear me say Suomela still.
I trust Dan, yeah.
Yeah. No, I asked Dan, and he double checked, and so it's Suomela, despite the fact that it was Suomela in Finland. I don't get it, but the other one is, for me, guys, is Vincent Praplin. Like, when we were discussing those lovely prospect pyramids that we never really got to because Erik Carlsson hijacked them.
What a jerk.
I did not have Vincent Praplin anywhere. I would probably put him here now, because he was that good in training camp. Like, that guy was a freaking beast. And he's 24 years old, so he's got pro experience overseas. But even though Reid was the last cut for the Sharks, I could see Praplin getting a call-up if he starts out strong in October.
Yeah, I like that you brought him up, Kevin, because I remember last year at the rookie tournament, he was a guy I identified as, trying to do too much, and because of that, it kind of hurt him, at least in my eyes. But then, he goes over to Cloten and puts up good stats, and from everything I'd heard, had worked on his play away from the puck and just his, I guess the amount of times that he tries to go into business for himself, and supposedly, it's helped him out greatly. So no, I'm with you. I think he could be an interesting piece to watch for the Barracuda. And, injuries happen all the time. Guys fall out of favor with the coach all the time. We could see any of these Barracuda guys be up with the Sharks, as early as November, depending how things shake out.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, I'm excited for the Barracuda. I mean, I'm excited for both seasons, but I mean, this Barracuda season. I mean, I remember last year going into the Barracuda season, I was pretty this team's not going to be very good. But this year, like I said, I don't know. I don't want to say they're going to run away with the division or anything, because that would just be that would be some serious Teal Tinted Glasses. Let's put it that way, because I just don't know enough about what other teams are going to look like in their division. But I mean, this should be a playoff team. This should be an exciting team to watch. This might be a team that wins a lot of 7-6 games, but I think it's going to be a fun team nonetheless, and it's definitely going to be worth the watch. I think. I mean, just based on what I've seen in training camp, guys that we've already mentioned, Praplin, Reid. And then you have some holdovers too from previous years that I think are going to be interesting to watch. My concern is that decor.
Yeah, and Paul mentioned that Radim Šimić did make the Sharks roster, which I can't wrap my head around that. I definitely
don't lose in waivers,
but I think he'd clear easily.
I think he would clear as well.
But I don't see the defensive side at all to Radim. I just don't. Which is frustrating, because talk about a guy like Lukas Radil. You guys are mentioning him in the chat. He's going to start with the Barracuda. He could play the full year with the Barracuda, depending on how things go. But he was very good in training camp this year. Radim Šimić has not really impressed me, and he's 26 years old now. Radil's 28. He should. Šimić's 26. He should, but he hasn't. So I don't know.
Yeah, I've never been overly impressed by Šimić. Of what I've seen of him, I've never really been overly impressed. And I feel like I understand. I think that the reason why you're carrying both isn't because you're worried about losing Šimić to waivers. Is you want Šimić to be the 7th D, and you want to move Heat for something of value.
Could see that. I could see that. But yeah, I mean, and it's funny to say all that, because Šimić put up 25 points last year on the blue line. So it's not like his offensive output was that poor, or his numbers were that poor.
But that's his thing. He's got the shot from the point, but what else has he got?
Yeah, and I just don't think he passes the eye test. I know Drew Weber always loves that eye test and the advanced stats and whatnot. So I don't know. But yeah, the Barracuda, especially up the middle, I'm glad they sent Noah Gregor back to juniors. If I had ever finished the article that got another thing that got hijacked by Erik Carlsson's trade, one of my bullet points was going to be that Noah Gregor needs to be back in juniors this year, and because there's no point in having him on an ECHL affiliate that the Sharks don't have. Yeah. So send him back, get him more, groom him more, and give him a roster spot next year once there is one.
He's gonna tear the world apart over there.
Good. I thought he looked very good in camp finally. So I hope he does tear the world apart as an overager.
No, I liked what I saw. Like rookie scrimmages, tournaments, all that kind of jazz. I liked what I saw from him. I think having him slide over to the wing, I think helped him a little bit. But like you said, Kevin, now that he is an overage player, I want to see him go back and, like I said, really just set the world on fire. And from what it sounds like the team his team he's going back to is already stacked without him. And him going in will, hypothetically put them over the top.
AJ asking if Šimić is worse than DeMello. Yeah.
Yes.
Significant. I don't know about significantly, but I mean, DeMello earned his time, and Šimić, I mean, he's like for me, Šimić is an AHL journeyman. You call him up in a jam if you need a body to play some sheltered minutes on your blue line. That's all he is to me. I think that's all he is.
So, Kevin kind of brought this up in the middle of last season, and even Elliot Friedman brought it up a couple weeks ago, but
I love that comparison. Keep that up.
Well, you know what? What's the expression? Great recognizes great, or something like that.
Sure.
I like it.
But could the reason the Sharks have 8 defensemen be because there's a trade coming?
There's a trade to announce.
How many? How long have we all been kind of theorizing that there's more out there for Tim Heed than being in the press box.
Well, I mean, let's face facts here. Every time we do one of these shows, something happens that completely kills the whole point of the show. Like that's, again, I'm glad we didn't do many in the off season because we would have talked about Tierney and DeMello to death, and they're gone. So, like, whenever we talk about a coach at length, he gets fired. And when we talk about a player, or, tonight was, what are the Sharks going to do in the future about defense? Will they bolster their forwards? They need another center, apparently. Well, maybe the Sharks will make a trade tomorrow and get a NHL center. I don't know. You might be onto something, Hoggy Jerk.
Well,
I think that's the reason that you have the two players like still on the team. Like Tim Heed, look at Tim Heed can play. Tim Heed could quarterback some team's first power play. Forget second. And at worst, I think he's a second power play quarterback for, maybe the upper end of team, like in the upper echelon. Maybe if you're not Nashville, right? Like Tim Heed, I could spit out a handful of names where I think Tim Heed could fit perfectly into their power play. Like if you're Edmonton right now, do you not consider calling Doug Wilson and being like, hey, I've got this shiny 5th round pick. Do you want it for Tim Heed? I mean, at least you get something for him, right? Like I feel like with Tim Heed, I mean, there's a lot of, he could do something on a team that is not the Sharks, especially now with the current state. Obviously, with Erik Carlsson coming over, I mean, it's a silly blue line now. And there's no way anyone's cracking that blue line, barring injury.
I don't know. I mean, yeah, and I've jokingly said this on the show before, but there's a grain of being serious to it too. I kind of want to see what Tim Heed can do as a right winger. You know what I mean? Like I feel like especially in the AHL level, he's so good at offensive. He's so good offensively. I think, and you brought you or Kevin, I don't remember who brought up Edmonton. Todd McClellan's MO for a while was playing fringe 8th defenseman on the 4th line. So, maybe there's a match there.
We could, AO say, maybe we could still do Shane. I mean, Ottawa could probably use a power play quarterback.
Sure.
They lost theirs. So maybe there's a Tim Heed for Matt Duchene. I mean, why not? After everything else we've done to Ottawa this summer, why not? I think it's like
we'll somehow find a way to steal $8 million in cap space from Ottawa while we're at it as well.
Yeah, I think Melnick's probably gonna is interrupting Pierre Dorian's calls at this point. Is this Doug Wilson? Click.
No, this is Doug Wilson Jr. Oh, okay.
Okay.
You said Eugene Melnick, and now all I can think about is that video.
Oh, jeez.
I feel so bad for Ottawa fans. I really, really do. It's so sad.
Let me ask you this. How's our dressing room?
Terrible.
Do we have a lot of good character guys?
I don't know. Are you a good character guy, Kevin? I think you're a good character guy, Kevin.
Well, thanks.
There you go. We have good character guys.
Poor Ottawa.
By character, he means salty.
Yeah, hey, being sarcastic is part of a character. So
oh man, if you guys could only hear us offline when these shows end, the salt is just
Hey Cheryl, you're talking about all these people getting excited. You don't want to forget about the sponsors getting excited.
The sponsors are the most important.
Yeah, what do you think I keep trying to get people to subscribe and talking about the Mercury news and all that stuff? Trying to bring
sponsors.
in.
I want sponsors to be excited about us.
Then I can go. Teal Tinted Glasses is brought to you by Quaker Oats.
All right, let's get this back on track. And
real quick, since I do want to bring this up to wrap up the Barracuda stuff, just because they also sort of announced their roster today. Michael Brodzinski was cut.
Yeah,
I'm not surprised, but I still am, just because I felt like he was a guy that kind of just was around all the time.
Him, like a couple of the guys that got cut today, like Alex Schoen, like how the hell is Alex Schoenmore stuck around so long?
Yeah. Yeah, and actually, the worst thing is I was trying to scout someone else, and I saw Alex Shaneborn play for Allen in this game, that just coincidentally, and he had a double Gordie Howe hat trick. And I was like, where is that Alex Shaneborn? Like, wow. And I mean, he didn't just have 2 fights to go with his 4 points. I mean, he annihilated the 2 guys that he fought. So it was like, man, oh man.
I love ECHL hockey.
But so the lines that I am projecting for Friday night for the Barracuda would be Dylan Gambrell centering Lucas Radil and Vincent Praplin. And there's not really much to this other than just guesstimating. Max Latunov centering Jaden Halbgewachs and Manny Viederer. Alex True centering, if healthy, John McCarthy and Philip Sandberg, and Tim Clifton centering Francis Pallon and John Martin, with the defense being Jacob Middleton and Nick DeSimone, Kevin Fitzgerald and Jeremy Waugh. Welcome back, Jeremy Waugh. And I don't know who's going to be with Kyle Wood, but in camp, it was Keaton Middleton. I would have thought it would have been Shimmick in that spot, but Keaton Middleton and Kyle Wood, wow, those are 2 big boys.
Yeah. I think Keaton Middleton probably rounds up that D. I can't see him not being on the team. All right, guys. So the NHL season officially kicks off tomorrow. Let's say some stuff that we'll look back on and be like, wow, we're dumb. Who are your top 3 teams in each division to send this baby home? Hockey Jerk.
Okay. Top 3. Pacific, and I'm just going to throw out 3 names. This is not 1, 2, 3. This is just 3 names. San Jose, Las Vegas, and Los Angeles. Bold pick, I know, and I don't like doing it, but, you know, I'm a big fan of Ilya Kovalchuk. You know, I think he is going to add some goal scoring that they desperately needed. And, you know, let's not forget that defense and goaltending is tightened up, you know, last season. And if it stays there, you know, the LA Kings are notorious for sliding in, you know, at the last second. So, you know, who's to say it won't happen again? You know, Central Division, I think you're looking at Winnipeg and then you're looking at Nashville, and probably, I would say number 3 is I think St. Louis is going to have an ascent back to the top. You know, I want to like the Minnesota Wild, but they keep letting me down.
Minnesota's like the most just, they're so like, I don't even know how to describe them. Like, they're like the most like, they're just a team. They're not good. They're not bad. They're just there.
Yeah, exactly. The Metro, I don't even know who's in that freaking division. Probably, I don't know, Washington, Pittsburgh, and I'll say Columbus. Yeah, and then the Atlantic, you're looking at Tampa Bay, Boston, and I don't want to say Toronto because I really want to say Buffalo, but I'm gonna go with Toronto. And you know, you'll kind of notice, you know, for all that's talked about parity in the league, I feel like the big dogs on top have not changed.
Yeah.
You know.
Yep.
Kevin, fire away.
Okay, so in the Pacific Division, I have the Sharks, Golden Knights, and Ducks. Actually, I'd probably, if I was to order it, I would sadly say Golden Knights, Sharks, and Ducks. In the Central, I've got the Jets, Nashville, and the third team, I'm actually going to go with the Dallas Stars, which is a team that I usually just dump on every year.
And rightfully so.
Yeah, but I think Dallas is going to thrive under Jim Montgomery, and Chicago is a team that I would like to put there, but I have seen them a little, and in the preseason, I wasn't impressed with them. And granted, preseason's preseason, but I don't know. I think there's still problems there, and they have no Corey Crawford still. Talk about a team that needs to add a goalie via waivers. Chicago's.
Right. I was gonna say, man, I don't know. my faith in Cam Ward to get Chicago anywhere is not very good.
Yeah, it's going to be Ward and Forsberg to start out. And Forsberg, I was super high on Forsberg, and he had a pitiful season last year. So over to the Eastern Conference, I'm going to go with the Atlantic first. Tampa Bay, Boston, and Toronto. I think Boston is... It's funny because Boston lost both preseason games I watched of theirs, and I thought they looked amazing, and they still lost. So I think Boston's going to be just fantastic. Metropolitan Division, that's the one where I'm kind of a little like, Pittsburgh and Washington. The third team, as much as I don't like them, I'm going with the Philadelphia Flyers.
Nice pull. That's where I was going to.
Yeah, I just... they're starting to finally they drafted really well the last couple of years, but they're starting to see that come into their main roster now. And Lehigh Valley was a beast last year in the AHL, and it's time for some of those guys like Vorobiev, for example, to come up. So I'm liking Philly as that third slot.
I mean, if they can get another defenseman and a goalie, I'm inclined to agree with you, but I would say for Philadelphia, I'm cautiously optimistic.
Here's the thing though, like, because I like Philly in that spot too, and I'd probably go the same: Pittsburgh, Washington, Philly. The thing, the reason that I'm, with Columbus though, I mean, Columbus is one of those teams where it could really go either way because you don't know what's going to happen. Bobrovsky, Panarin, what's going to happen there? We don't know. Like, we don't know what that's going to be like, especially if they can't get either to commit to the team long term. Like, what effect does that have, in the room? So, I mean, they're both under contract years, so they might have great years, but also might just be an absolute disaster in Columbus too. And I feel like, I really liked what Ron Hextall's done in Philly, but I feel like, but at some point, right, you can do a lot of good things, but at some point it has to translate into something, right? Like, and that's where I'm at with Philly. Like, this has got to translate at some point.
Ian, your mom's here to pick you up.
Oh man,
did you hear that? I heard that horn.
I heard the horn too, but I didn't know it was me. All right,
that was actually me. We've got some activity going on in the Jerk Studio.
Oh, no. The Jerk Studio. I guess since I went from the Metro, I guess I'll go with the Atlantic. I think it's Toronto, it's Tampa, it's Boston, not necessarily in that order, but I wouldn't sleep on the Panthers, but everything else in that division is garbage.
Yeah. I'm curious to see how those three teams play when they play against a good team. Because I think they're going to torch their divisional opponents.
Oh, yeah.
But what happens when they
play
in the playoffs, when they play a Metro team? I think the Metro is going to be the best division this year.
And then, and Buffalo, too. I mean, Buffalo's a team that I don't know that you should sleep on either.
Dolly.
I don't know.
I'm with you. I know Hockey Jerk was talking about Buffalo well. I think Buffalo will be there.
I think they'll be there. I mean, they're not touching the top three teams, I don't think. Right. But I think they're there, and I think Florida could be there. I think it wouldn't surprise me. If Buffalo or Florida ended up with a wild card seed, I wouldn't be shocked by it. No, But I feel like, but then Montreal, Detroit, Ottawa, I mean, that's just a tire fire. I guess that moves me into the Metro, we did the Atlantic. I guess I'll go to the Central. Winnipeg, Nashville, St. Louis. I really like what the Blues did this summer. There's a lot to like. I think the Blues would be getting a hell of a lot more talk, I think, coming into the season if it wasn't for some Erik Carlsson trade that kind of just stole all their thunder. Because I thought St. Louis had a really good offseason with the moves they made. I really like Ryan O'Reilly. But again, Dallas could be right there too. I think Dallas is another team that could be right there. I'm not high on Minnesota at all. Chicago, meh. But I think Dallas could be in the mix, but I just think St. Louis is just top to bottom a better team. In the Pacific, San Jose, Golden Knights, and oh man, that third one, just throw a dart.
You were talking earlier. I think you had LA in that.
Yeah, I guess I'd have to go LA. I think LA might surprise some people. Like, I think a lot of people are writing LA off. And I need to see Calgary and Arizona at this point. Like, I'm just at the point now where I've been, it's like Paul said earlier, you pick them year after year and they're supposed to do something and they never do. I need to see it. Like, I can't, at least with LA, like, they've been a consistent, they're a consistent contender in the Pacific, whereas I'm not sold. Like, I need to see Calgary actually do something, because Calgary is supposed to have done something, years. And I think, Edmonton should be an interesting team to watch too, depending on how, if they get out to a good start, then they can, they might be able to ride that through the season. But I just feel like LA, it's an aging core, and I think Dustin Brown's going to be out for a while. But I mean, it's hard to, I'm not a super Jonathan Quick guy, but he's a good goalie. I don't think he's the super, best goalie ever that he's made out to be. But it's still hard to count out a team that has, Anze Kopitar and Drew Doughty as well. So I kind of like LA in that 3 seed, and I would be happy to be wrong because they're the Kings. But I need to see Calgary do something. Like, I agree, Calgary on paper looks like they should be, this force in the Pacific, but I feel like we've been saying that for 4 years.
Yeah, I think with Calgary, I think it's going to be, and you said we say it every year, but I really feel like their moves, will finally push them into that next step. I mean, bringing in my whole thing with Calgary, and we've seen this in the last few times they've made the playoffs, is just they need more goal scoring, and you bring in James Neal, and you bring in, I'm going to throw a brick at that car that's honking.
They really want to pick you up and take you out to In-N-Out.
No, they must have been.
See, that's more sponsor plugs there.
There we
go. They bring in James Neal, the real deal James Neal. Sorry, they bring in Elias Lindholm, who I liked what I saw from him in Carolina, and then Dougie Hamilton going out obviously hurts, but you get back Noah Hannafin, who is supposed to be the premier defensive defenseman from his draft year, and so it'll be interesting to see if that comes into fruition. But the thing that's gonna be interesting for me to see, and you can't credit me for this because I heard somebody else say it, but apparently when TJ Brody was playing his best hockey, he was paired with Mark Giordano, and he hasn't been with Mark Giordano the last 2 seasons, but apparently they're going to be back together. So that might be something interesting to see. Maybe TJ Brody and Giordano can kind of get back to where they were 3 years ago. And, I know a lot of people like to dump on Mike Smith, but you know what? The dude is good for, 25 wins, and if you have him in your fantasy team, wink, wink, Cheryl, he'll get you a lot of saves.
Yeah,
that's fair.
Yeah.
All right, guys, let's get final thoughts, and then let's get the hell out of here. Hockey Jerk, I'll let you go first.
Final thoughts. Thank you for listening to the Teal Tinted Glasses podcast presented by Dayquil. The season starts I don't know if you do, Cheryl. I just know that you're in my league. The season starts tomorrow, and I think the three of us can all agree that it's been a long time coming. I'm obviously it's a really exciting time of the year. You get to see, what guys got better, what guys got worse, how guys gel with their new teams. So, it's always fun to watch. The Sharks are, for me, they were the divisional favorite before Erik Carlsson, and now they bring him in. And I mean, in my eyes, there's no way the Sharks don't win the division. Of course, I'll probably end up being wrong in some capacity, but it is what it is. You can find me on the Twitterverse at hockey_jerk, where I am no longer campaigning to be the captain of Montreal Canadiens, but I'm doing just about everything else over there. So if you like your timeline flooded with the opinions of a madman, go there.
Go ahead, Kevin.
Speaking of flooding timelines, Friday, as I mentioned, is the Barracuda season opener. Unfortunately, I won't be there. I will be out of town for a memorial service. So I hope everybody shows up and rocks that place for the baby Sharks. But you definitely will be getting your timelines flooded if you follow me at Kevin Lacy 22 with tons of Barracuda news and prospects talk over the season. The regular season starts tomorrow. Just wrapping up what kind of the overall what we discussed. The preseason is too long.
It is too long.
Preseason is too long. It's nice to get the regular season underway. Poor Calgary had 10 preseason games this year. Why? 10
squads.
And then and then poor Edmonton, like the regular season starts tomorrow, except for Edmonton because they're playing DEL's Kulner Haya. So hey, all right. But
if they get slacked though by the DEL team, like do they just burn it down before they even?
Yeah, AJ mentioned in the chat about Todd McClellan getting fired first. He might not make it to the official regular season if they lose to Kulner tomorrow.
If he just gets left in Europe, they'll just leave him there.
they'll do the Gerard Gallant. We're just going to leave you on the side of the highway. Thing that Florida did. And then Carolina will find a cab for him somehow and pick him up. Another team that I think will be really good this year, Carolina. But thanks for watching our season premiere, and it's I hope to be on more episodes than I was over the summer. I'm really excited for the season, and yeah.
All right, guys. Just want to say hey to everyone in the chat. Thanks for watching and checking us out. Obviously, we're gonna keep doing this as frequently as humanly possible. So, obviously you want to hit the subscribe button, you want to hit the notification button.
You want to honk your horn at Hockey Jerk a few more times. I bet it's AJ. I bet AJ's parked outside your house right now.
It's very possible. He, I believe I do owe him an autographed puck, so I may have to go sort that out.
Oh man, yeah. I mean, so obviously, the preseason's over, the season's starting. Next time we're going to talk, we're going to have real stories to talk about, even though we've kind of had real stories the whole time. But we definitely appreciate, especially you out on the wire there, Oilers fan, coming in, hanging out with us, talking hockey. I mean, that's really awesome when we have other teams, fans coming in and checking us out. We appreciate it. If you have friends that you think might be interested in the Teal Tinted Glasses, brought to you by Diet Pepsi. Sorry.
And Gatorade.
and whatever else.
News.
Yeah, there you go. Definitely, have them check out our show. You can find us anywhere podcasts are for an audio stream. You can find us anywhere podcasts. Again, special thanks to Paul Gackle for coming on and joining us tonight. And we're hoping we're going to see a lot more of Paul going forward this season. Other than that, if you guys have questions that you want to watch, or you want us to answer rather, you can always send them to me, and I will make sure that we do our best to get them online. And, obviously once we figure out our schedules and stuff, we'll figure out what our Barracuda coverage is going to look like officially going forward. Is something we still have to discuss. That's it. Thank you guys so much for watching. Have a good night. And we will see you. Yes, and a good season. And we will see you next time.